So call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Please stand as if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence or a silent prayer as your conscience finds appropriate. Thank you. Please be seated. Members of the council, you have an agenda before you, or any amendments required to the agenda? I received a phone call from the town manager earlier today that item 8, legislative action item 8, enter into an agreement with Sewing and Parliament and Economic Development is not ready for the agreement is not finalized, and so that needs to be removed. Are there any other changes? Are there any conflicts of interest for members of the council? Are there any public comments on the agenda? Hearing nothing, I hope that my audio is working. May I please have a motion to approve the agenda as amended with the removal of item 8, legislative action item 8?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Foe. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Smith, barely ahead of Councilmember Mayers. Is there any additional discussion or public comment on the agenda? Seeing no indications of that, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua. I can loop back to Councilmember Lingua. Councilmember Siddiq, is Councilmember Siddiq present? Councilmember Siddiq told me he would be a little bit late, 15 minutes late, so hope to see him shortly. Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
And Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua, are you back and prepared to vote on the agenda as amended?
Yes. Yes, I am. Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes. I abstain. The motion passes 5-0-1. The next item on the agenda is a presentation from the Maryland Department of Agriculture on mosquito control program from Brian Prendergast. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you for coming, Mr. Prendergast.
Well, sure. It was not really a presentation, but I'll mention a few basic facts which might preclude some questions, and then I'll answer questions because I don't know what the issues are. There are always issues, so I wouldn't be surprised by that. So we, at the Maryland Department of Agriculture, we're one of the few states, at least on the East Coast, that does it statewide, that does mosquito control statewide. And we have cooperative agreements with 15 counties. So there are some counties that just don't participate with us and they may have gotten out of our program long before they hired me, so I don't know exactly why. Anyway, every county is different, but in Prince George's County, we bill the county and then the county bills the communities. So the counties pay for larviciding for 100%, or no, let me see. Yeah, the county pays 100% for larviciding, and then they pass the cost for adulticiding along to the communities. So if you're in Prince George's County, you will get larviciding in your community. And it's sort of an unfortunate reality that larviciding is not enough to keep the mosquitoes down below our treatment threshold. If it were successful in keeping it below our treatment threshold, we would never have to spray and we wouldn't have an adult spraying program. We do have an adult spraying program. And like I said, in Prince George's County, 100% of that cost is borne by the communities. So we bill the county and then the county bills the communities. Basically, the county is a pass-through. There are some communities where, or some counties where we communicate with the communities directly. And then some other counties where the counties pay for everything, and so they don't have to go to the communities. But like I said, in Prince George's County, for the adulticiding, the communities pay 100%. They pay that to the county, and then the county pays us. And so, you know, there's no profit on the county's part. When that money comes to us, when we spend it in Prince George's County, so, you know, it's not like we take money from Prince George's County and we go spend it in Somerset County. That usually like 95% of the money that comes from a particular county goes back into that county. We spray a chemical called permethrin 3030. So I suspect a lot of you are looking that up as we speak. So that's PERMETHRIN 3030. 30 stands for, it's 30% permethrin, 30% of another chemical called bipyrenol butoxide, which is a synergist. So the active ingredient is permethrin. And various formulations of permethrin are toxic to bees and other things. The formulation matters as much as the active ingredient. In this case, we spray 0.8 of an ounce per acre, which is not a lot of material. And we spray in very, very tiny droplets. So those droplets never really land anywhere. And actually, I looked this up because somebody was challenging me about a year ago. About 10% of the material falls out. You know, they land on lawns or picnic tables and such. The other 90% just keeps going into the wild blue yonder. When the sun comes up, it breaks it down. It's very photosensitive. So in that respect, it's kind of eco-friendly. So anyway, we spray that material, and if your community is in our program, we have an office in College Park, which would serve all of Prince George's County, all of Montgomery County, and all of Howard County. So the questions that you have are better directed toward the College Park office. And I looked at the list of attendees real quick, and I did not see that the people that from that office were on, but I'll communicate with them after, well, probably tomorrow, and just let them know that I talked to y'all.
Okay, we had a presentation from them and did not have all our questions answered, which is why we asked you to come.
Oh, okay.
So is that a summary of what you wanted to present, or do you still have more to go?
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary.
Okay, well, let me tell you the reason we invited you and some of the questions we have. We have a concern from some of our residents, including many members of our sustainability committee, about the impact of the mosquito spraying program on pollinators, butterflies and bees. And so we have a decision to make over the next few months about whether to continue participation in the program. So right now we are participating and have, I believe, as needed spraying. You know, as you said, if the capture numbers get high enough, the sampling numbers get high enough, then there is spraying to control. There's another piece of the program that you didn't mention, which is that if there are mosquitoes trapped that are carriers for, or carrying, excuse me, West Nile, that there seems to be an at least almost mandatory spraying in a 1 mile radius around where those were collected.
Yes, it's mandatory. It's not almost mandatory. We suspend all exemptions. So I should talk about exemptions a little bit and also talk about West Nile virus positives. So anybody that wants to can apply for an exemption. And there is a section on the form that says while you're applying for the exemption, the fact is, if you apply for exemption, we give you an exemption. When you have an exemption, we turn the spray off 300 feet before we get to your property, and then we turn it back on 300 feet after we leave your property. That might make your neighbor very unhappy, and we don't get involved in those kind of conflicts. And there are some communities where there are so many exemptions that we cannot spray them. And, you know, so those are a couple of very important considerations. Now, when we do nuisance spraying, nobody could ever make the case that the mosquitoes that we're killing are not carrying disease agents. So it could be that our nuisance spray program is killing a lot of mosquitoes that are carrying disease. We can't prove that, and we can't disprove it. But the one question you had was, what are the effects on pollinators? We spray at night. So most of the daytime pollinators, like bees, are not active at night when we're spraying. And I'd already said we spray tiny droplets. We have to measure our droplets twice a year by law. And the material doesn't land on surfaces, doesn't stick to surfaces. So when the sun comes up in the morning and the bees come out and they're crawling across surfaces, those surfaces do not have our pesticide on them. And, you know, I guess there's various ways of looking at it, but in my opinion, our sprays don't affect pollinators at all. Our sprays certainly affect the pollinators much less than paving the habitat over or putting concrete over the habitat. So, you know, anyway, the various things go on, but those things have nothing to do with mosquito control. Those are the two biggest things we do for pollinator protection. We spray at night because if we spray during the day, the material would go up into the sky and it wouldn't do any good. We cannot spray during the day. We have to spray after the thermals stop, but it has the added benefit of not affecting the daytime pollinators.
Okay, one of the questions that that came up during the last meeting, and I'll just ask you, was there's a concern that the daytime pollinators, you know, don't have watches and don't know exactly when sundown is, and so they tend to sort of congregate outside of their dwelling places, just like people used to sit on their front porch and drink iced tea in the evening. Don't do that too much anymore, but the bees still do that. And so the exact timing of the sprays might impact that. Is there a policy for exactly how long after dark the spraying starts, or is that left up to the local offices?
Well, we get started about an hour before sundown, and then we go until 2 o'clock in the morning if need be. So there really is not a schedule that says we got to be at this place by a certain time, because we have so many communities to treat that we just cannot get to all the places in with any kind of certainty by a particular time. when there's a disease-related spray, we try to narrow it down so that we can say we're going to be there right around sundown, or we're going to be there later at night or something like that. And that's only because reporters like to sit and wait for our vehicles to go by. And if it doesn't go by, then the reporters call me and say, hey, I never saw the truck. And then, you know, who knows what happens after that.
Okay, so let me make sure that I understood correctly. You said you start an hour before sundown? Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay. And your statement about the surfaces are not an issue. That's just because there's a factor of 10. You said about 90% floats away and is eventually destroyed in the sunlight the next day, but that 10% falls out, and you just think the 10% is not seriously impacting the pollinators.
Correct.
One other question, and I just remember this from last year, is that the width of the spray, the sort of impacted area, is about 200 feet from the street. Is that correct?
So considered to be 300 feet from the street.
300. Okay, thank you.
And one other thing, a bee is a much larger animal than a mosquito, so it would take a lot more insecticide to kill it. So when 10% of the material is on a surface, that's not enough to affect a bee. There's been a lot of research done at Louisiana State University where they show that with the very active mosquito control processes, the number of bees in that area are not affected at all. So there is some evidence that we don't have any effect on pollinators.
Would it be possible for you to provide me and the rest of the council with links to that research?
Sure.
Okay, that would be fantastic. That's one of the things that that I was looking for. I'm sort of an unusual mayor in that I have training in science, not in entomology or anything like that, but I am able to read most papers and get something out of them. So, and the other thing I wanted to confirm, because I had heard that this had disappeared, is that you can do the per property exemption for from the spraying. You can ask that your property, that the sprayers be turned off 300 feet either side of your property. That is still active in Prince George's County?
Yes, and you can find the form for requesting an exemption on our website.
Okay. Okay, looks like Councilmember Lingua has a question for you. So I will let him take a turn. Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Pendergast, good evening to you.
Hello.
Are there any other studies other than the one from, where you say it was LSU?
Yes.
Were there any other studies that have been reviewed? By any chance, has University of Maryland at College Park done a study on this that you would be aware of?
My knowledge, the University of Maryland has not. And in the paper that I have from LSU, they cite other papers, but I cannot tell you what those papers are.
Thank you.
I think that that you've answered most of my questions. I had a lot of questions for the your representative from the College Park office, but I think that the excuse me. I think that some of the big issues that we have for the spraying times, which I got an answer for, the personal exemptions, which I have an answer for, and the studies about impacting pollinators, which I hope to receive from you shortly. So unless there are other questions from the council, and I don't see any hands up, I'm going to open this up for questions from members of the public. Are there any public questions for Mr. Pendergast. Looks like there are two. Ms. Katz.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Mr. Pendergast. I was curious, you mentioned about the ineffectiveness of the larviciding with regards to the need to still to do the adulticides. I was curious, what does the state do with regards to confirming the effectiveness of your program?
We're required by law to do back checks to determine if the larvicides work, and larviciding works very well. It's just that there are a lot of times with all the larviciding in the world, we still need to do adulticiding because we didn't kill all the larvae when the mosquitoes were in the larval stage, and the adults came out and started flying around and were biting people.
Sure.
We're required to do back checks, and we're required to, and back checks work really well with larviciding because we put a material into, say, a ditch, then we go back to that ditch a day later, a couple days later, and we can determine whether the stuff worked or not. But with the adult spraying, we're also required to determine if there's some efficacy there.
And what's the procedure for that? Or how do you, I was curious how often, how often you do these performance, I guess these are kind of performance measures, right?
Well, okay, we cannot spray unless there's a certain number of mosquitoes that are in our traps. We have traps in Prince George's County. There's over 50 traps per week, probably over 60 traps per week. If the trap is over threshold, then we spray. And then the next week we put a trap in that same spot. And if it's over threshold again, we spray again. If it's under threshold, then that means that the spray was successful. Problem is, in the week between the first trapping and the second trapping, a lot of mosquitoes can come out of the water, out of the woods. There's really no way to know whether they're new mosquitoes or old mosquitoes, but we do quite a bit of trapping in Prince George's County, quite a bit of trapping in Anne Arundel County, quite a bit of trapping in Baltimore County. And we look at that trapping to determine whether the spray is effective.
I'm trying to understand that process. So I apologize if I don't mean to be hogging all the questions here, but who determines those thresholds? How are those thresholds determined, the over threshold? Is it ever?
So those thresholds were determined before I got hired, but it's 24 females in a trap in a night. So if it's above threshold, we spray. If it's below threshold, we don't spray. But I don't know who determined those thresholds, except to say that they work pretty well.
Yeah. What makes you say that they work pretty well?
Well,
You base that on?
if they were much lower, we would not have enough resources to spray all the communities. And if they were much higher, then we would never spray. So in that regard, we seem to be hitting the sweet spot as far as determining how many mosquitoes is too many. And again, this is a nuisance control program. So we're trying to knock the mosquitoes down so that people are not affected by the nuisance, but it's nowhere near perfect. When we do a disease control related spray, we put out a press release. We tell people we're going to be spraying in a particular area and it's 3/4 of a mile around either an infected person's home or a trap with a mosquito that has the virus in it. We spray 3/4 of a mile radius, and we're working much harder to make sure that we're doing a good job of killing the mosquitoes because the disease is not good.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining that. I'll sit back for someone else who wants to ask a question.
I'm actually going to ask a follow-up question. This was something I believe we heard in the previous presentation. Was there a recent change in your traps? What traps you were using? These new ones are more targeting the Asian tiger mosquitoes.
Well, the Asian tiger, we do have a trap for the Asian tiger mosquitoes, but that's not one of our primary targets.
Okay.
But there was a recent change in the types of traps we're using. We didn't get rid of the old traps, but we're incorporating a new trap. So we used to have 2 different types of traps. Now we have 3 types of traps. The newest type of trap is called a Gravid Trap, and it attracts Culex mosquitoes that are laying their eggs. And Culex mosquitoes are the ones that carry West Nile virus. So it's very effective that we're able to attract and trap those mosquitoes. Those are the ones that we want to trap, and those are the ones that those traps are really good for.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Katz, I presume that your hand is still up from previously. Ms. Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hello, everybody. I did want to follow up on the questions about the evaluation. The 24 females per trap per night. Is that just females, or is there anything related to whether or not they're carrying West Nile or some other disease that determines
If they're
you're going to
carrying
spray?
West Nile, then the threshold is much lower. The threshold is 1.
Okay.
So with all our traps, including the Gravid traps and including the CDC traps that collect a whole bunch of different species, we send the mosquitoes to the state lab to determine if they have virus in them. If we detect mosquitoes with virus in them, and it could be as low as 1 mosquito, then we'll spray in that area. And like I said earlier, a 3/4 mile radius around an infected trap. If it's just nuisance control, then the threshold is 24. So the threshold is much higher when you're looking to control a nuisance than it is when you're looking to control a disease.
Thanks. And the other question I had was, aside from the larvicides and the adulticides, are there other programs or parts of your program that support other ways of controlling mosquitoes that might be effective without the use of chemicals, like making sure that there's no standing water and that sort of thing?
We put a lot of effort into public education, and we tell people, I'm on the news. Some years I'm on the news 7, 8 times. Some years I'm on the news once. But I always tell people, dump any containers they have that hold rainwater. Those containers will breed the Asian tiger mosquito. And the Asian tiger mosquito is an invasive species. It's been here since about the early 90s. And it is not very well controlled by our sprays. So very often people will go into their own backyard, they'll get chased away by mosquitoes, and then the truck will go by and the people driving the truck won't actually spray. And the reason they don't spray is because the Asian tiger mosquito, well, a couple things. It doesn't fly very far. So when the truck is at the corner of the street, they're not perceiving the mosquitoes that are in somebody's backyard. And so the truck will drive away because they don't know the mosquitoes are there. And even if they knew they were there, that particular species is not affected by our spray. We do a lot of public education. We do a lot of larviciding. People don't notice us doing the larviciding, but we put a lot of effort into it. They notice the trucks because the trucks are very noisy. And so we do a lot of that. With the Asian tiger mosquito, it's not affected by our sprays very well, but there is an initiative in College Park and a bunch of communities in Montgomery County, and a few communities in Prince George's County, where they're putting out what's known as GAT traps, Gravid traps, GAT. So if the problems that you're having are from Aedes albopictus or the Asian tiger mosquito, I would say look into that program. But I would caution, not all mosquitoes are container breeders, and so not all mosquitoes will go to those gat traps. So if you live near the watershed, say the Anacostia River, where there's a big floodplain, then there's a good chance the mosquitoes that are bothering you are not coming from the backyard and will not be controlled by gat traps.
All right, thank you. I don't exactly have a question about it, but I did just want to request that if the council could share the studies that are being shared with the rest of us, I would really appreciate that. I'm interested. I'm a little skeptical too of the impact on pollinators, and so I'd be interested in looking at those as well. Thank you.
I'd be more than happy to share that with you. Well, two comments before I move on to Steve. One is that I actually just last week purchased some of the gat traps. I got 2 of them for about $80, including maybe it was $90, including delivery, and put one of them together, and we'll be deploying it shortly. As soon as I hope we won't have a hard freeze coming, since I think they might be damaged in a hard freeze. And so I can talk to people about that individually offline if needed. One question, just follow-up question on your statements about the larviciding and the Anacostia. Are there limits to the areas that you larvicide in? You don't go into creeks, or you just do standing water, or what are the limits on the larviciding program?
Well, yes, we do not larvicide creeks for a few reasons, but mosquitoes don't breed in creeks, and they don't breed in lakes and such. They breed in water that doesn't move a whole lot. If the water moved a whole lot, then they would, the waves would get into their breathing apparatus and they would drown, just like we would drown. If the water in the stream or river is not flowing, then there's a chance that the mosquitoes would breed on the edge, but we don't larvicide in those areas. We larvicide in ditches, in storm sewers, and in areas that are prone to flooding. And so very often, mosquitoes will lay their eggs in areas where they know, somehow the mosquitoes can tell that the area is prone to flooding, but they lay their eggs when the area is dry. And then it rains real hard, the area floods, all those eggs hatch. The reason that the mosquitoes lay their eggs there is because there's no predators in there. Then those mosquitoes will complete their life cycle, they'll come off as adults, they'll start biting people, and that's when people call us to complain, and usually by the time they call and complain, it's too late for us to do anything about it as far as larval control, because the larvae are already done with that part of their life cycle. But anyway, the question was, do we larvicide in streams like the Anacostia River? And we do not.
Okay, we have some bodies of water that vaguely approximate a stream but are extremely slowly moving. We have very low slope land in a lot of places, and so perhaps I should follow up individually about some of those places. There's one in Councilmember Lingua's ward that is an extremely slowly moving piece of body of water. I would say that maybe on a typical day, maybe a foot per minute, you can watch things drift very, very slowly downstream. And it's in an area that tends to flood also. But perhaps we should just cover that later and find out if it's covered by your program or not. Because I think there are a lot of mosquitoes that are coming out of there. That's typically where the center of our public health sprays is that area.
It could be, in general, if there are predators in a particular body of water, there won't be mosquitoes in there.
Yeah,
so
I'm not sure that there are predators in this. It's like I said, it's very slow moving body of water. I haven't seen minnows or fish in it of any sort, but we can, as I said, I think just following up for that body of water individually might be a good idea.
Okay.
Councilmember Lingwood, can I let Steve speak first since he was up before you? Is that acceptable? Okay, Steve, please give your last name so we can have that for the minutes.
Yeah, I was going to edit that beforehand. I'm Steven Savage. I think you just actually talked with my wife. Thank you. Sorry about that. I tried to edit it, but Zoom and I aren't getting along well tonight. So I live in Ward 1 as well, if people need to know. So Mr. Pendergast, thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it. I have a couple of questions. First one is, are you concerned with the spraying program of any resistance associated with the spraying of pyrethroids? Even using a synergist, I would think that frequent spraying might develop some resistance patterns.
We are very concerned with resistance, and there's a center of excellence in Cornell University where we collect egg masses. So the mosquitoes that carry West Nile virus are Culex mosquitoes. That's a genus of mosquitoes, and those mosquitoes lay their eggs in egg grafts. It's fairly easy to identify the egg grafts, so we collect the egg grafts and send them off to Cornell University, where they test them to see if they are resistant to the pesticides that we're using. We spend a lot of money on pesticides. We want to know if they work. And we've been trying to get this done for the last 3 years. And because of very, very small staff, we're again trying it this year. We're going to try it a little different way of doing it, but the point there is that we're working to get it done, but we haven't done it yet.
Okay. And you mentioned both Aedes, and I don't know if you mentioned Anopheles or not, but Culex. How many different mosquito species are being targeted with the spraying program?
Targeted with the mosquito spraying program, there's about 15. It
Okay.
really depends on where you live. Some areas, there's a lot of cattail marshes, and the mosquitoes that'll come out of a cattail marsh are different than the mosquitoes that'll come out of a salt marsh. So depending on where you are, there's about 15 different species.
And I guess a follow-up to that is that because it seems like there's different vectors involved, is there any program that the Department of Agriculture offers for, kind of best practices? I've noticed that at least in my end of the community, there's invasive bamboos and kind of standing waters in certain places, but different species of plants that, particularly with the Asian tiger mosquito, seem to present a problem for spraying programs. Is there anything that the Department of Agriculture either encourages through best practices or have programs to support removal of that you're aware of?
Well, I got it. Yeah, that's the, I guess the magic word is that I'm aware of. I'm not aware.
Yeah.
In my program, we do not, except to say that I'm on TV some years 7-8 times, and I always tell people, if they listen to me, if they can hear me and they can listen to me, then and they do what I suggest, and that's great. As far as like a list of best practices, we tell people in all sorts of public education, either on TV or in meetings like this one, or school meetings, teach classes at universities. We tell people the biggest thing, the most important thing is to dump containers that hold rainwater. And those containers that hold rainwater are going to be in people's yards. And that particular species, it's the Asian tiger mosquito, it doesn't fly very far. So if you're experiencing those mosquitoes, they're either coming from your own yard or your neighbor's yard. They're not coming from the natural area down the street. They're not coming from 3 miles away. They're coming from like your own yard. So I make sure that everything is cleaned up. If I can't clean things up, I treat it. I do that. I mow my lawn once a week. So I move all of that stuff once a week. It seems pretty easy to me. Like I said, I'm on TV all the time. If people are listening to me, that's what they do.
Right. I meant from a more of a community point of view, but the point I appreciate. I I think I had one more question, and that was concerning, I wasn't, well, it's more of a statement. I didn't know if you're aware, but the Environmental Protection Agency and their pesticides program is currently, they go through their 15-year rotational cycle for what's called registration review for pesticides. And each of those active ingredients, including the synergists, go through a new review. And I know the pyrethroids and the pyrethrins are going through that right now. I think that their risk assessments are set to be published shortly. So I will, if I hear that, I will definitely share with Mayor Thompson and the council the link to those documents when the public docket is open. And that should contain an up-to-date environmental impact risk assessment, which would include both target and non-target organisms. So thank you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing that. And yeah, you're right. They do reviews of all pesticides. And so they will be doing a review of the pesticides that are used in mosquito control. And the thing that's unfortunate about that is just about all the pesticides that are used in mosquito control are pyrethroid insecticides, which means they're all very closely related to one another. If there's resistance to one, there's resistance to a bunch of them. And if the EPA puts out something saying that they don't like one, they're probably not going to like any of them. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's correct. They actually are, I believe, planning to publish all the pyrethrins in the same federal docket. So they will be inclusive of all the chemicals, but I believe anyways, at least that was their plan that they posted. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that information, Mr. Savage. Please, and I will keep an eye out for that, but if you see it, please send it to me as quickly as possible, and I will share it with Mr. Prendergast.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Are there any additional, Councilmember Lingua, you had your hand up earlier about the particular body of water in Ward 3.
Yes, I did. And you had mentioned essentially about in terms of treatment, or there was a discussion about predators. It's not so much that there aren't any, there's just not enough. There's a fairly good sized bat population in the area, but it's really not large enough to address the mosquito issue over there. And I think the area that you're talking about in Ward 3 is what used to be the original course of the northeast branch of the Anacostia.
Yes.
Which is now, which got turned into a collection and a drainage that runs down towards another drainage canal that runs down toward the pumping station. And all those channels are, as you said, very slow moving. And that's just in this area. We haven't discussed areas over by Lafayette, where we have similar drainage runoff, which runs along a naturalized channel area running parallel to the back of Thrifty Ironworks. There's also the issues that we're now trying to address over on Longfellow and 48th with the properties there, as well as the wetlands just off Taylor Road at roughly the 5500 block of Taylor on the west side.
5500, yes, I know where those also.
So right back in there. There are also areas. There's actually, I believe it's viewed by either the state or the county as a wetland back there. So there are numerous areas, and so anything that help that.
it may be that if we could just get a marked up map of what areas are being actively larviciding, then we can see if we can identify others that need it.
Oh, absolutely.
Would that be-
Absolutely.
Would that be possible, Mr. Prendergast?
Actually, I don't know. I would be speaking for the people that do larviciding in your area, and we're in the process of digitizing all our maps, but I don't know if those ones have been digitized yet or not. And
Okay,
but having said that, all of the materials that we use for larviciding are considered biorational. We use a bacteria that's called Bacillus thuringiensis, variety israeliensis, that kills only mosquitoes, midges, mosquito larvae, midge larvae, black fly larvae, and not a lot else.
okay,
We use a chemical called aldacid. The active ingredient is methoprene, and that mimics an insect's hormone. It kills mosquitoes. It's also not very wide spectrum. It kills mosquitoes and a few other primitive flies, but not a lot else. So those are the two principal products that we use in Prince George's County, and they're both what is called biorational.
okay. Just to say one thing, Councilman Lingo, I believe that Mr. Prendergast was referring to in-water predators for the larva mostly, and not the bats. But I'm not sure yet. Ms. Katz.
Thank you. Just thought of something else. With the risk of resistance over time and the potential of, the chemicals being classified in a different way over time with their impact, is your office, and just a lot to ask, are you guys thinking about the future at all with regards to other technologies like sterile insect technique or anything like that for the future?
As a matter of fact, we're considering using sterile insect technique if it's necessary. So right now there is a very large population of Aedes aegypti in Washington, DC. We see maybe 2 or 3 Aedes aegypti in Maryland. Aedes aegypti also doesn't fly very far. So the theory is that they're living in DC, they breed in the storm sewers and or in the steam underground where they have steam pipes, and then they come out and they feed on homeless people. And so Aedes aegypti feeds almost exclusively on people. They're like 98% of their blood meals are from people. We only see a few of them in the state of Maryland, but if we saw more, then we would consider using the sterile insect technique. Mostly because when you have that few, really the only good way to find them is with something like the sterile insect technique. Right now, there is no sterile insects for Aedes albopictus, the Asian tiger mosquito, but they're working on it. So, it could be that something gets approved tomorrow. You can call me a liar. But we're always looking at new processes. There's a bacteria that's called Wolbachia that makes mosquitoes sterile. It's very expensive. That's not something that we're considering, but we know about it. And the big thing with all of these different processes is how much does it cost? Is it cost effective? And aside from the sterile insect technique, it's hard to imagine anything would be cost effective, but we're always looking. If we find that our mosquitoes are resistant to what we're using, the Permanent 3030, we're going to switch. That's that's why we check in the first place.
Thank you. I'm really glad that all that stuff's on your radar as well. And I guess expense, it's like the old game 52 card pickup, all at once or one at a time. So even, if the expense reduces the amount of times you have to go out and spray, of sterile insect technique, if it's much more effective, then, I don't know what the return on investment would be. Yes.
Well, yeah, it kind of depends on if we start seeing a lot more, but so far we've only seen maybe 2 or 3 in a summer.
Okay, well, thank you.
Mr. Savage.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. Do you have the relative cost difference associated with that, or is it still too early in the game to, I know generally speaking what the cost is that the town is providing, vis-a-vis the county, but I don't know how that would compare to either doing a Section 18 program or something along those lines.
Are you asking about
Section
the cost
18
of
is
the
an
sterile
exemption,
insect?
excuse me. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm talking in lingo here. I mean to. I meant use like sterile insect. Like, what's the relative cost? The previous gentleman that was here mentioned that it was much more expensive, but I don't know if there's a relative cost analysis for that, or if we even.
I don't
can
know what the
compare.
cost would be for the sterile insect program, but because we would be using it in a very targeted area, it probably not cost prohibitive, but we don't have those numbers. So we've never done a cost analysis to see if it is way more expensive than what we're doing now. Having said that, it's the only thing that's likely to be effective. So it kind of boils down to whatever it takes.
It also sounds like you're at the will of whatever happens in the district as well, because you mentioned that there's the Aedes aegypti mosquito seems to be coming from there. Do they have a spraying program as well that you're aware of?
They have a mosquito control program. To my knowledge, they don't do any adult spraying. They only do larviciding. And why they have so many aegypti, I don't know exactly, but they're there and we see them, like I said, 2 or 3 times every year. I know the people who do mosquito control in Fairfax County, Virginia, and they see them every once in a while in Fairfax County as well. And like I said, the theory is that, actually, I don't think I said this. The theory is that occasionally mosquitoes will fly into somebody's car and then the people will drive out to Maryland and open the doors and the mosquitoes will fly out. And, whether that's a good theory or not is another, you could debate that for years and years. But anyway, we only see 2 or 3 a year, which wouldn't justify the expense. But if we had a very firm feeling that they were established in Maryland, we would probably use that sterile insect technique because that's really the only thing that would work. We spend a lot of effort looking for where these things are coming from and might not ever find them. So we'd be using the male mosquitoes to find the females, and hopefully that would take care of the problem.
And the sterile mosquito program is only available for Aedes aegypti, or are there other species that it's
To
available
my
for?
knowledge, it's only available for Aedes aegypti. I think they're working on it for Aedes albopictus, which is very closely related to Aedes aegypti.
I didn't know if it would cover any of the Anopheles species or the Calyx or any of those. So, okay.
To my knowledge, not so far. And yeah, I really don't know.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't either. So I was curious.
But that's driven by the public health issues in West Nile, is to try to catch those. Those are why they're available for those mosquito species. Is that right?
Well, Aedes aegypti does not spread or carry vector West Nile virus. West Nile virus is vectored by Culex mosquitoes. Aedes aegypti is capable of carrying a lot of disease agents. So in order for a disease agent to spread, you need the mosquito and you need the disease agent. We don't have the disease agent. Having said that, dozens of people get off airplanes every year with dengue fever, with yellow fever, with malaria. And so we've never had any local transmission. They get off the airplane with Zika. And we've never had any local transmission, but we hope to keep it that way.
Okay, we've been at this for half an hour, I think, maybe more. Are there any final questions, or can we wrap up and thank Mr. Pendergast? Okay, looks like we're good. Thank you very much for coming to speak to us. And as I said, I look forward to seeing those publications. And we will share any information we have about the EPA review as soon as we find it, and hope that if you see it, that you send that to us also.
I'll send those tomorrow because they're on my computer at work. So
I understand.
that's what I'll do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Okay. That was a nice long discussion. Let's move on the agenda. The next item is proclamation recognizing Ethics Awareness Month. Hold on for just a second. See if I can get that up. I grabbed the wrong file. There we go. Found it. I like to have it on my own screen. Thank you, Director Box. Appreciate that. I'm going to start with English since it's the first page. Whereas elected and appointed officials and public employees recognize that their chosen profession is built upon the public's trust. And whereas elected and appointed officials and public employees may earn the trust of their communities by adhering to high standards of ethical and moral conduct. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park has established an ethics commission and provided guidance to elected and appointed officials and employees through the adoption of Chapter 32 Ethics. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park recognizes the International City-County Management Association's Code of Ethics as the standard for proper public administration, and has distributed copies of this Code of Ethics to all elected and appointed officials and employees of the town. And whereas an awareness of ethical standards and programs helps to promote a strong public image and maintain a moral course. And whereas the International City-County Management Association, the National League of Cities, the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and numerous other national and state municipal management associations encourage their members to strengthen and abide by certain ethical standards. Therefore, be it resolved that the town of Riverdale Park, mayor and council do hereby proclaim March 2022 as Ethics Awareness Month in Riverdale Park, and call upon the elected and appointed officials, public employees, residents, government agencies, and all other individuals and institutions in the town or who conduct business in the town to recognize the importance of ethical conduct in our community and to commit to increasing awareness and understanding of the ethical principles that should guide our professional and personal interactions with one another. And now in Spanish, por cuanto los funcionarios y empleados públicos elegidos y designados reconocen que su profesión elegida se basa en la confianza del público, y por cuanto los funcionarios y empleados públicos elegidos y designados pueden ganarse la confianza de sus comunidades al adherirse a altos estándares de conducta ética y moral, y considerando que el pueblo de Riverdale Park ha establecido una comisión de ética y ha brindado orientación a funcionarios y empleados electos y designados mediante la adopción del capítulo 32 ética, y considerando que el pueblo de Riverdale Park reconoce el Código de Ética de la Asociación Internacional de Administración de Ciudad Condada como el estándar para la administración pública apropiada y ha distribuido copias de este Código de Ética a todos los funcionarios electos y designados y empleados del pueblo. Y considerando que la conciencia de los estándares y programas éticos ayuda a promover una imagen pública fuerte y mantener un curso moral. Y por cuanto la Asociación Internacional de Administración de Ciudades Condadas, la Liga Nacional de Ciudades, la Conferencia de Alcaldes de Estados Unidos y muchas otras asociaciones de administración municipal nacionales y estatales alientan a sus miembros a fortalecer y atenerse a ciertos estándares éticos. Por lo tanto, se resuelve que el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Riverdale Park proclaman marzo de 2022 como el mes concientización de ética en Riverdale Park y convocan a los funcionarios elegidos y designados empleados públicos, residentes, agencias gubernamentales y todas las demás personas e instituciones en la ciudad o quienes realizan negocios en la ciudad para reconocer la importancia de la conducta ética en nuestra comunidad y comprometerse a aumentar la conciencia y la comprensión de los principios éticos que deben guiar nuestras interacciones profesionales y personales entre nosotros. Thank you very much. This is a very important proclamation and something that I hold near and dear to my own heart. The next item on the agenda is Women's History Month proclamation. And let me make it large enough that I can read it. A proclamation in honor of Women's History Month 2022. Whereas Women's History Month has been observed annually during the month of March in the United States since 1987. And whereas women of every age, ethnicity, nationality, parental status, physical, mental, and developmental ability, race, religion, sexual orientation, skin color, and socioeconomic status have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our communities in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. And whereas women have played and continue to play critical economic, cultural, and social roles in every sphere of life by constituting a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside of the home. And whereas the 2022 Women's History Month theme, as designated by the National Women's History Alliance, is providing healing, promoting hope, and is a tribute to the ceaseless work of caregivers and frontline workers during the ongoing pandemic, and also recognition of the thousands of ways that women of all cultures have provided both healing and hope throughout history. And whereas women were vital in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions in our country, and continue to be, and whereas women served as early leaders in the forefront of every major progressive social change movement and continue to lead the way as champions of social and economic justice. And whereas women have been leaders, not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and other movements, especially the peace movement, which created a more fair and just society for all. And whereas despite these contributions, the role of women throughout history and still today has been consistently overlooked and undervalued in the literature, teaching, and study of American history, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Riverdale Park Mayor and Council do hereby proclaim March as Women's History Month and call on everyone in our community to observe March as Women's History Month with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. Y ahora en español, proclamación. Una proclamación en honor al mes de la historia de la mujer 2022. Considerando que el mes de la historia de la mujer se ha observado anualmente durante el mes de marzo en los Estados Unidos desde 1987, y considerando que mujeres de todas las edades, etnicidad, nacionalidad, estado parental, capacidad física, mental y de desarrollo, raza, religión, orientación sexual, color de piel y estatus socioeconómico han hecho contribuciones históricas al crecimiento y fortaleza de nuestras comunidades en innumerables formas registradas y no registradas. Y considero que las mujeres se han desempeñado y siguen desempeñando funciones económicas, culturales y sociales críticas en todas las esferas de la vida y constituir una parte significativa de la fuerza laboral que trabaja dentro y fuera del hogar. Y considerando que el tema del mes de la historia de la mujer 2022, designado por la Alianza Nacional de Historia de la Mujer, es proporcionar sanación, promover la esperanza, y es un tributo al trabajo incesante de los cuidadores y trabajadores de primera línea durante la pandemia y curso de también el reconocimiento de las miles de formas que las mujeres de todas las culturas han proporcionado tanto curación como esperanza a lo largo de la historia. Y considerando que las mujeres fueron vitales en el establecimiento de las primeras instituciones caritativas, filantrópicas y culturales en nuestro país y continúan siéndolo, y considerando que las mujeres sirvieron como líderes tempranas en la vanguardia de cada importante movimiento progresista de cambio social, continúan liderando al camino como campeonas de la justicia social y económica. Y considerando que las mujeres han sido líderes no solo en la garantía de sus propios derechos de sufragio e igualdad de oportunidades, sino también en el movimiento abolicionista, el movimiento de emancipación, el movimiento obrero industrial, el movimiento de derechos civiles y otros movimientos, especialmente el movimiento por la paz, que creen una sociedad más justa y equitativa para todos. Y considerando que a pesar de estas contribuciones, el papel de la mujer a lo largo de la historia y aún hoy han sido sistemáticamente pasado por alto e infravalorado en la literatura, enseñanza y el estudio de la historia de América. Ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Royal Park proclaman marzo como el mes de la historia de la mujer y llaman a todos en nuestra comunidad a observar marzo como el mes de la historia de la mujer con programas, ceremonias y actividades apropiadas. Muchas gracias. Also a very important proclamation for this year. And with that, we move on to the next presentation, which is the fiscal year 2023 budget presentation. Deputy Director Gentry Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's budget presentation revisits budget challenges and opportunities for the upcoming fiscal year 2023 budget. So to begin, we have budget challenges. Staff have examined 4 key budget challenges that the town faces for fiscal year 2023. First being economic outlook. So currently there is a great deal of economic uncertainty, and we expect that uncertainty to remain in the next fiscal year. Inflation is a concern running throughout the country. Employees and vendors and the town are all affected by inflation. According to the Wall Street Journal, from January 2021 to January 2022, inflation surged from 2.5% to 7.5%. So with inflation, spending becomes more expensive as a result of rising prices. Thus far, in projecting fiscal year 2023 numbers, health insurance and workers' comp are expected to increase by over 10%. There is much uncertainty with oil and in turn gas prices. Additionally, the town is exploring an increase in COLA, or cost of living adjustment, as a means to combat inflation. But a rise in COLA is also a rise in a cost for the town. With that said, the town will continue to closely monitor any economic impacts that affect the town. The second budget challenge for fiscal year 2023 are geopolitical issues. So with geopolitical issues that occur throughout the world, they do in turn have their impacts here in the town. In particular, much of the incidents that are occurring right now overseas. This goes hand in hand with the economic uncertainty that I just mentioned earlier as the first budget challenge that the town faces. Oil prices have recently inflated as a result of the geopolitical conflict. Inflation, which is already expected to rise, with oil prices rising, can actually edge that figure even higher, according to the Wall Street Journal. So in putting together the budget, the town continues to look to a conservative approach with putting budget numbers together. A third budget challenge for fiscal year 2023 is Safe Speed for Students. So Safe Speed for Students is the speed camera program aimed at reducing the rate of speeding vehicles in an effort to make the town a safer place. Revenue has increased, which means that there are far too many cars on the road continuing to speed. In our most recent report, however, revenue is beginning to decrease. So we are seeing some progress there. So we will continue to monitor the Safe Speed for Students reports and evaluate. So one of the challenges here is to find an alternate way to change behavior in the event that the Safe Speed for Students program does not reduce speeding. Staff have explored spending on pedestrian signs, and currently at this point, staff is looking to actually raise our revenue projections for the upcoming budget. Historically, the town has kept speed camera revenue projections fairly constant. And while we don't want to build a budget relying on speed camera revenue, we must acknowledge that students and pedestrians are being put at risk. So that's something that we are taking into account as we proceed with the budget for next year. The fourth budget challenge that staff have identified is the constant yield rate. As Ryan discussed in his presentation during last week's meeting, the constant yield rate has retracted. So budgeting around the updated constant yield rate is another challenge that the town faces. The assessable base does not include the Calvert track, but there is roughly $33 million in growth that we are looking at. But we must keep in mind that the town has lost about $28 million in the industrial area. The next portion of the presentation will cover budget opportunities for fiscal year 2023. So the first budget opportunity is the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA funds. The American Rescue Plan funds are federal dollars that, according to the White House, were dealt to the town to provide direct relief, contain COVID-19, and rescue the economy. ARPA funds provide an opportunity to issue direct relief through some of the programs that the town is looking into and already performing. We have business assistance, community assistance, develop programs for the town, community development, as well as fund CIP expenditures and fund capital acquisition, not only for this fiscal year, but also in the next. ARPA funds also provide opportunity for the town to continue to deliver farmers market dollars, PPE distribution, and both rental and utility assistance for residents. Another budget opportunity for fiscal year 2023 is the real property tax. While the overall assessable base has shrunk, the town believes that there is a building subject to tax that would bring additional revenue. As the town continues to be conservative in estimates of real property tax revenue, there may be an opportunity for any additional revenue that exceeds estimates, which could potentially be used to fund CIP projects. The third budget opportunity for fiscal year 2023 is revenue in excess of expenditures. So similar to the real property tax, being conservative with our projections, when putting together the budget, it provides an opportunity for the town. So in the event that the town has any revenue in excess of expenditures, that additional revenue could potentially be used as a means to fund capital acquisitions as well as new projects. So last thing I'd like to note is, with all of the uncertainty, we need to keep in mind that this type of revenue source is not one that we can continually rely upon. That concludes the presentation on revisiting budget challenges and budget opportunities. Now present an opportunity for comments and to answer any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Jones, thank you very much for that presentation. To the first two subject topics that you brought up in your introduction, in terms of changes to the economy and as that's being influenced by what's currently happening in the world in Eastern Europe, is staff looking to provide an update on their assessment prior to the April 9th meetings that we'll be having?
Mr. Jones, if I could address that in terms
Yes,
of scheduling. So the proposed budget is scheduled to be delivered to the council on April the 4th, I believe. Ms. Barnes, correct me if I have that date wrong. We would have we'd be looking at information up through finalizing the numbers right before then. We are anticipating the impact of inflation. We have to consider that, as Mr. Jones said, as we're looking at the cost of living adjustment. We're also considering the possibility of having more of a one-time benefit for employees to help deal with inflationary cost that would not create a structural change in the budget, but could also provide some relief to our staff. And then it could be reevaluated in 6 months and things of that nature. So we will continue to look at the information is the short answer, sir. And we will be speaking with you all again next week at the State of the Town. And so we'll talk a little bit more about budget then, and then again at the very end of the month, and then on April the 4th, if Ms. Barnes verified that date.
Thank you.
Does that answer?
Thank
your
you.
question?
Yes, thank you.
Councilmember Smith, you have a question or comment?
If I could ask Mr. Lestitian real quick, you mentioned a non-structural adjustment to the our payment scale. Could you say a little bit more about that?
Well, it's something that the Budget Committee is considering, and it's a little premature to talk too much in detail because I'm not sure what's going to be in the proposed budget. But it is an option that we're considering in addition to a COLA. If the inflation issues may be resolved in a year or two, it may be better to combine a COLA with one-time adjustments as you can call it a bonus, you can call it a stipend that provides additional relief to staff without creating additional structural changes.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Lestitian, Mr. Jones. Count me as a council member, all in favor of COLA increases for our town staff that does such an amazing job and has really helped us through this pandemic. And as hopefully we are finally starting to see an enduring light at the end of the tunnel rather than the one of the past 2 years that has kind of gone in and out. I will say that that in my day job, where we're represented by a union, we come across this issue, and I actually work for a labor union as well. The issue of one-time spending for compensation for bonuses. What happens when we do that, however, is that say we give a 2% COLA just for sake of argument. Then next year we do a 2% COLA, and that 2% is 2% more than the 2% increase this year, and so on down the line. So our town employees are continuing to reap the benefit of that going forward, as you discussed, Mr. Lestitian, in a structural way. However, a bonus, a one-time payment, does not continue to accrue in that way, and it's I'm not a fan of that practice, and I know we'll be discussing that more, but I think that we should be able to compensate our town staff fairly without giving those one-time payments that don't continue to accrue over the course of a career. I mean, we're talking, it could be, tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars when you talk about a 30-year employee over the life of, or over their career with the town. So just to note that, and again, just a comment on the inflationary environment that Mr. Jones mentioned, I would, as I've brought before this council previously, note that as wages are essentially stagnant, prices are increasing, so are corporate profits. And we have corporations that in their quarterly filings are even bragging about, some of America's largest corporations bragging that their price increases have outpaced inflation and allowed them to turn these record profits while the rest of our country is still struggling through this pandemic. And I say that in this forum to note that this is not just like a grand structural problem or Councilman Smith's like soapbox issue, but like this has real effects on people here in our town and the balance, the books of our town itself. When we're having to have these conversations about how we address inflation, both in our spending outwardly, but also in compensating our staff. And we have people that are like not essentially like actually not paying into the system at their fair share. And I always like to highlight that one of the great ways that you can avoid what corporate America is doing and really plundering the American pocketbook in this time of struggle is to join a union yourself. I always encourage that. And there was one more thing I was going to say on that, but we've been at it for a while, so I'll see if I can think of it before my council members report.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could clarify my earlier comments.
Please.
So, sir, I'm not suggesting that we not have a COLA.
I'm aware.
I think the town is very generous in their compensation to the staff, to include for the majority of our staff in the defined benefit plan, paying over 20% of their salaries into a retirement plan. So I do think that the town historically has done a good job in being fair to our staff. I wanted to clarify that the budget committee is looking at providing a COLA, but in addition to a COLA, offering some sort of a one-time, and it may be every 6 months, if we're dealing with a temporary change. So if prices, and if you look at prices now, prices are going up. Some sectors retract and then they go back up and they retract. So we're just sensitive to creating too large of a structural change and not being able to afford to deliver quality services. So I look forward to working with Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith and the rest of the leadership team as we finalize the proposed budget. And then I look for spirited conversations and questioning of yourself, sir, and other members of the council.
Thank you, Mr. Listish. And I did recognize we were talking about a COLA and the bonus.
Great.
I'm simply not a fan of the bonus. I think why not just do a larger COLA? And I also appreciate you breaking that down for me and understand that your position here is not necessarily to advocate for one course or another, but to present the options to us as a council.
Yes,
and I definitely respect and appreciate that.
Councilmember Siddiq, you have a comment.
Yeah, so again, my impression is this town has a lot of very dedicated and effective workers, and wage growth has been growing at a pretty substantial rate. The issue is inflation has been growing also. And so while a COLA will help address part of that, it seems like we might be in a position where considering our wage rates are also part of that equation, because the wages are rising across the board. Is that part of the upcoming budget also?
Yes, sir. And we do not have time between now and the adoption of the budget to have a consultant conduct a class and compensation study. The last time the town did that was in 2016. However, we are in contact with our competitors, the other municipalities, and we will be gleaning information from their studies in terms of classification and compensation. And it is difficult comparing town to town. because you have to look at total compensation and to include benefit packages and things of that. And so we do communicate with our competitors, and that will be part of our consideration as we propose changes. Another component will be requesting funding for a classification and compensation study in fiscal 2023.
Thank you.
Mr. Town Manager. Are there additional council questions or comments on the this item, the fiscal 2023 budget presentation? Are there public comments or questions? Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In hearing this conversation, it came to me it might be enlightening for folks as we go into as we wait for the presentation of the 2023 budget to review over not only fiscal year 2022, but is also fiscal 2021 and 2020. And what I mean by that is something more than what is presented each month by Mr. Jones, and really kind of get in and start looking at certain line items, especially in terms of pay and benefits, as well as post-employment benefits that we offer. And just see how we've been making commitments in this past near term, so as to have a base to be able to see what's going to be presented in this 2023 budget. And for those members who may not have these, it's my hope that staff could be able to provide the relevant PDFs.
They're all available online, sir. And
okay, great.
And if anyone needs assistance, Ms. Barnes will be able to provide assistance.
Okay.
Okay, any additional council or public comments on the fiscal year 2023 budget presentation? Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Thank you, Mr. Town Manager, for answering some of the questions and concerns of the council. Checking the agenda, next item is my report. I'll start out by giving a report of the closed meeting. We had a closed meeting of the council just prior to this meeting. All members of the council were in attendance except for Councilmember Sadiq. And the reason for the closed meeting was to discuss the town manager's performance review. And this is under the exemption to the Open Meetings Act that allows us to discuss personnel matters affecting a particular person in a private session, so that we can have an honest discussion of the issues. And just to let you know, there was one item that was one substantive item that was voted during the meeting beyond the motion to adopt the agenda and to go into closed meeting, which was to adopt the draft report that I had prepared and distributed to council, allowing for copy editing levels such as correction of typos or spelling mistakes. And I was directed by the council to deliver the final written report to the town manager. And that, I believe, meets all of the legal requirements for reporting the closed meeting. Go on to the next topic in my report. There was a court decision today. The council many months ago adopted resolutions opposing the redistricting map for the county council districts that was introduced at a very late stage of the process and voted through on very thin margins by the council. Effectively the Supreme Court of the state of Maryland decided today to overturn that map and to allow the redistricting commission's recommended map to be adopted instead. And so the council's wishes were granted by the High Court. And I was very pleased to see that, that result. Last topic that I will cover in the report is the current state of COVID. As I believe Councilmember Smith mentioned not too long during his discussion of the budget, we've hit 2 years, or at least I knew it was coming and was going to be bad 2 years ago. I think that the shutdown of town operations was maybe 1 week shy of 2 years, but we're at 2 years, and it's been a long, hard trek through this, and we've lost a lot of people. We've lost a lot of economic momentum, but we're here. Those of us who are listening have survived it, and those of us, I want to give my thanks, personal thanks, to all members of town staff who have stuck with us and worked so hard through this, and recognize your large and small sacrifices in doing that. And I appreciate all of your work, and I appreciate the work of all of my colleagues on the council as well. These are tough times for electeds trying to find a pathway through. And thank you for all of the work that you all have put in. With that, the numbers, the county numbers, the diagnosis numbers are very good. I believe that we are actually the best county in the state. We have a case rate, 7-day average case rate today of 4 diagnoses per day per 100,000 residents. And that's good. That's very good on an absolute scale. And I'm very pleased that we are doing that and that we are leading the state as a county. This isn't true all across the country. There are counties in Maine, for instance, that are 10 times that rate still, so they are still in trouble. But with these new numbers, even I have relaxed a little bit. I had the indulgence on Saturday of getting my hair cut for the first time since early November. I've been looking a little bit less crazy. I had dinner at a friend's house on Friday night. That was after all of us had quick COVID tests that came out negative, so we felt pretty good. There were only 4 of us there. Everyone was vaxxed and boosted, and we tested negative, so I felt comfortable being there for a little while to have dinner. And as Director Barnes is aware, I'm feeling comfortable enough that I've registered for the Maryland Mayors Association in-person meeting that will happen at the end of this month. So I'm feeling much more comfortable, and everyone I think knows here that I'm very conservative, but I will continue to watch the numbers. And even with the good numbers in my comfort, I'm not entirely happy about the situation that we are in. I'm honestly quite disappointed in the CDC's newest masking guidance. I think that the best masking guidance right now is that still, if you are in public places and you can make it work, if you're not eating or drinking, it's a good idea to have on a mask. It's a good idea to have on the best mask that you can. I would love it if the case rate in the county dropped to 0 diagnoses per day per 100,000 residents. We had to start going to weeks to see numbers that were above 0. And a way to do that is to continue, when it's possible, when it works, to continue wearing masks. I hope that everyone listening will take that into account and will try to do so. I recommend taking during this time when rates are low, preparing for the next wave. Most of the virologists, the epidemiologists, the MDs that I am paying attention to are pretty sure there's going to be another wave. And we don't know how bad it's going to be, how infectious it's going to be, but they all expect another wave at some point. It may be next month, and maybe before the end of the month when I have my meeting that it starts. But hopefully it'll be far out. But just in case, we should prepare. That means those of you who are still unvaccinated, still have not gotten your 3rd shot, not fully up to date on your vaccinations, please do that now. Stock up on N95 masks if you're running low. I went to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription for one of my family members and found asked if they were giving out the N95 masks that were provided by the federal government. They were. I picked up another dozen masks from that at no cost. And also, in terms of stocking up this week, I haven't seen the news articles, but it's supposed to happen this week, that there'll be additional opportunities to get free rapid tests from the federal government by applying online. And just as a reminder, none of us want to catch this disease. If you've had it once, you don't want to catch it again. If you haven't gotten it, you don't want to catch it. There are more and more studies coming out about long COVID, where symptoms persist for months or years, perhaps permanently, after an infection, even after a mild infection. And just this morning, I read a news story that there's an estimate that there are 1.6 million people in the United States who are unable to work because they are still experiencing symptoms of long COVID or extended symptoms of COVID. So try to avoid it, wear your mask, get vaccinated, and get ready for a possible and likely future wave of this disease. With that, I will conclude my report. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the town manager's report. Mr. Town Manager.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council and our community and staff team, just a few things this evening. One on ethics awareness. I want the council to know that every member of the staff team will participate in a training program through Legit, the local government insurance trust. At some point during the month, it's an online training program. And that we on the staff team, we incorporate ethics into many of our discussions. And that's part of our E to the fifth that you may have heard about. It starts with ethics and then expectations, efficiencies, effectiveness, and execution. And but everything goes back to ethics. And I think that the staff team have a healthy approach to such conversations. Where we're able to look at things and have discussions, because sometimes things are not crystal clear, and you may have gray areas. And it's good that that we have a culture where discussion of ethics is encouraged. I will also want to remind everyone that the State of the Town presentation is next Monday evening, the 14th. At 7 p.m. and it's a virtual presentation. On the proposed budget, consistent with the town's commitment to sustainability, we're trying to only print the number of hard copy books that are needed. So if members of the council would like a hard copy, please let Director Barnes know. And otherwise they'll be delivered in electronic format. And lastly, on Women's History Month, Mr. Mayor, we appreciate the proclamation this evening. And history is written every day in both big and small places. And I know that the women that I work with closely, especially on the staff leadership team, but throughout our organization, are helping to write the history of the town. And it's an exciting story. And so to the contributions that they make each and every day to improve the lives of our residents, I thank them. And that's all I have this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I agree completely about the women on our staff. They are creating and writing the history. So it's an important part of it. And there's a good number of them on the leadership team. It's good. We've been very good at ensuring that we have access. One question about the ethics awareness training, is that available for electeds also, or is it aimed more at staff?
I believe it's probably aimed at staff, but I will have Mr. Smith advise on that. And we may have to get back to you, but we'll take a look and let you know, sir. Okay. And if not, MML may have something as well.
Okay, I think it would be good for the electeds to also observe this month and think a bit harder about ethics. So I at least would like to have an opportunity for that training if possible.
Absolutely, sir. Well, I'll coordinate with Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Are there additional council questions for Town Manager Lestition? Are there public questions or comments for Town Manager Lestition? Okay, let's hop ahead to the monthly finance report. Presumably Deputy Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's finance reports subject to audit include a revenue and expenditure comparison dating from the beginning of the fiscal year to July 1st up to February 28th. It's covering the 2 previous months, January and December, as well as the 2 previous fiscal years, fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2020. So for the current fiscal year in February, revenue totaled $454,922. Expenditures totaled $535,803, with a net of negative $80,881. The year to date, from the beginning of the fiscal year up to February 28th, the total is $7,779,000 for revenue. So revenue is performing well, currently at 99% of what the town budgeted. For expenditures, the total is $5,039,000. So spending is still conservative. Expenditures are at 64% of the budgeted amount. So the net for the current fiscal year as of February 28th is $2,740,000. So overall, town is currently in a favorable financial standing with roughly 4 months left in the fiscal year. We like where we are as we put together the budget. So at this point, I will open up the door for any questions or concerns.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there questions or comments for the Deputy Director? Any public questions or comments? I will just say that I'm glad that we're at this position in this time of the budget year also. It looks pretty good. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
Councilman Lingua, do you wish to make a motion to adopt?
Yes. Yes, I would. I'd like to make a motion to adopt the finance report subject to audit.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilman Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Sadiq. Is there any discussion of the motion? Are there any public comments? Do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 601. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the correspondence summary. Everyone should have received the correspondence summary. Are there any need to discuss this correspondence? Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, fire department report. I did not receive one. Did staff receive a fire department report? Okay. That brings us to council, committee, and ward reports. So we'll start with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1. Wait, Councilmember Lingua, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Question being, it seems we've been a number of months without a report from the fire department, and I kind of find that as a cause for concern.
Okay, well,
And
would you like me or staff to reach out and just make sure everything's okay over there?
I think that would be a good idea. Yes.
Okay. I will add that to my list.
Thank you.
Okay, council committee and ward reports. Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
There we go. No, my camera's working. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I won't take too long after I've already given my rant for the night. Just want to say I want to thank the folks at Banana Blossom Bistro for the service they provided to this town. They opened just before the pandemic began and managed to make it through with lots of warm, full bellies in the process. For those who haven't heard, they'll be moving to a space in Union Market. Wish Annie and Phil the best as they move back to California. And for anyone else who's wanted a nice restaurant or retail space with some wonderful historic exposed brick, I encourage you to check out our town center here in Ward 1. And that'll conclude my report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Foe, Ward 2.
Good evening, everyone. Probably a little bit all over the place, but I think you've learned to accept that from me at this point. National Women's Month makes me constantly think that I was raised in a household with an incredibly strong woman. I had an incredibly strong woman as a grandmother. I married an incredibly strong woman. I have a sister that is an incredibly strong woman. And I'm glad to live in a town where we have multiple women on town staff and leadership positions. I make no decisions in my life without the consult of women, and I think that they deserve equal access to every decision-making room that we have in this country. And it's just a remarkable spirit that they have shown throughout the history of this country. And I show deference to them any chance that I possibly can. As the mayor mentioned in his report, the Maryland Court of Appeals today overturned, or they didn't overturn, they supported the ruling of a lower court case, or a lower court, and threw out the gerrymandered map introduced by Councilmember Derek Levon Davis, self-proclaimed master of Robert's Rules. Council President Calvin Hawkins, Denny Taveras, Mel Franklin, Sidney Harrison, and Todd Turner. I was one of the 152 people that spoke against this process that the county council initialized a few months ago. And what is truly remarkably scary about this is that they ultimately very easily could have gotten away with this. It was a procedural error that caused this to be thrown out. It didn't have anything to do with, you know, the public's dismay of this action. So I ask myself, what can we do moving forward? Because it's very easily to see that, you know, this has now been punted for the next 10 years, and we can, you know, rest on our laurels and say we fought the good fight, when in actuality, another council 10 years from now can do the same exact thing that they did, with this process being a little bit more cleaned up, and do the same exact thing. So I'm not ready to bring this up at new business. I'm not ready to ask town staff to do anything, but I think what we need to do at this point is step up the pressure to ensure that no council has the capability of this. We need to focus on a legislative change that doesn't allow a map to be introduced in such a backhanded way as this was. So I would love to be at the forefront of a collaborative effort to bring together municipalities in Prince George's County to say enough is enough and you can't do this. And I think a great place to start is looking at the race for District 3 council member to replace Danielle Glaros's vacated seat in the fall, and make sure that we know that those elected officials, we don't want this, and we want to see legislation put forward to prevent this from occurring in the future. It is a great result, but simultaneously, those 6 members who introduced this gerrymandered map spent our tax dollars defending it in court, and now we're going to be forced to utilize our tax dollars to pay for the additional court costs that they've encumbered upon ourselves. I just don't think that has been very responsible management from our county council, and I think that they do deserve criticism. All right, I'm off my high horse on that. Ladies and gentlemen, it's gardening season. Stuff to get excited about, right? I'm looking at my UMD, Maryland Extension Home and Garden Information Center. My beds are ready. I have seeds going upstairs right now. And we are looking to form a community of gardeners here in Riverdale Park. It's amazing. We're talking about seed starting. I think collectively and collaboratively, when we come together, we can share information as to what does well here. And as we talk about the increasing costs of goods, reducing our carbon footprint, I think a great way to start doing that is a backyard garden. And I would encourage anybody in our town that has the space or wants the space to reach out to us and see what we can do. I think I had something else. Let me look. No, I lost my train of thought. I don't think anybody's going to miss out on that last point anyways. So with that, I hope everybody is doing well. Always concerned about your emotional well-being. I hope that everybody is doing well. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Councilmember Fo. Councilmember Lingua, you have a question?
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Based on the topic that the councilman from Ward 2 brought up regarding a plan going forward to avoid what happened these past few months at the county council regarding redistricting and a process, it would seem to me to engage, to begin such a process, that a good body to go before and to bring this up would be the Prince George's County Municipal Association. And if the council member thought that that was a good idea, would the councilman be inclined to stepping up and being the representative to the association for the town of Riverdale Park?
I don't know what those responsibilities would be. I would certainly consider it, and I appreciate the suggestion, Mr. Councilman, but I'd have to look more into it, and we can talk about that maybe offline at some point. Okay?
And Councilmember Lingua, you are fully aware that the voting member is the senior elected from the municipality. So if I show up at the meeting, I get to vote anyway. But anyway, yes, I would actually be happy to have Councilmember Fo attend some PGCMA meetings, and I intend to continue attending them as much as I can, but we'll see.
Yeah, my wife just whispered in the background, I think you were just voluntold.
Yes, so I will. I'll take one moment and say, Councilmember Fo, that you are very lucky in your gardening pursuits that you don't have the very aggressive anti-tomato black walnut trees in your yard that I have. It's very disappointing to have your tomatoes sprout up and produce a beautiful green fruit and then die from the black walnuts. But
that's crushing.
It is crushing. It was terrible.
Beautiful tomato is why every gardener gets into it. So
it's completely true. Okay, with that, Councilmember Lingua, report for Ward 3, and go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And to the point I last heard, what I was presenting there was just a suggestion. The Central Kenilworth Avenue CDC will be meeting tomorrow evening, rescheduled from the March 1st meeting. Meeting will be from 6:30 to 8 p.m. It'll be via Zoom. To find out more, you can go to their website, ccarcdc.org, to find out more. At this time, an agenda has not been released, unfortunately. I'll make sure by the work session next week to have a report regarding what was discussed at this upcoming meeting. In other news, in terms of saving the date, in May, there is going to be a Greater Riverdale Health Fair. That is looking to be scheduled for May 21st from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And that is going to be at 5711 Sarvis Avenue in Riverdale Park. And the focus of the event is to directly provide health services and referrals so as to aid in the well-being of residents in Riverdale Park and the general area. The folks at Greater Riverdale Cares would appreciate it if folks would let them know if they would like to attend or if they would like to have a table at the event on the 21st. And they would appreciate it if you could send to Greater Riverdale Cares the most up-to-date information and any logo you might have. And otherwise, feel free to share the announcement that the event will be going on the 21st. They're looking to have a planning meeting on March 21st through the 25th, sometime during that week. And it's going to provide time for both health organizations and community leaders to meet and give input into what stakeholders would like to see at the health fair. Anyone who would like to attend, they would appreciate letting them know which date and time would work best by filling out a doodle poll. And I will put that in the chat box for folks to be able to link to. So the other thing that they ask for is that if an organization is interested in attending the Spring Health Fair, to reply with 4 items. One being the services they would be able to provide to the community, a logo for the event flyer, social media handle or handles, and as well as the available time that they could meet by filling out the doodle poll. Anyone who would like to find out more information from them can get in touch with Bronte Nevins, who's the Community Health Programs Manager with the CCAR CDC. And I will leave her contact information in the chat box as well. And at this time, that is all I have for the report.
Thank you, Mr. Councilmember. Councilmember Siddiq.
No update this time.
Thank you. Councilmember Mejia.
I have no update either.
Thank you. Councilmember Mayers.
No report at this time.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the Council Committee and Ward reports. Let's move on to public comments on non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Are there any public comments? I'm not seeing any hands up. So let's move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda is voted without discussion by a single motion for all items. May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, I think the motion was from Councilmember Mayers. I was watching the green. Is that correct?
I believe that
No.
was from Smith.
Yeah, Councilman Smith.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was saw Councilmember Mayer's rectangle light up. So who had the second? Sadiq?
It was me or
Yeah, that's fine.
So the motion was Smith, the second was Sadiq. Is that correct? Okay. There's no discussion, so let's go ahead and do the roll call vote. Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua?
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq?
I.
Councilmember Mejia?
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers?
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. This brings us to legislative action items, and it's 9 p.m. That's not too bad. We've done worse. So the first item under legislative action items is a motion to authorize the town manager to send a letter to the Board of Zoning Appeals in support of variance request for variances of 13 feet front yard depth and 22% net lot coverage for 4514 Riverdale Road. May I please have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Sadiq. Is there discussion of the motion? I will jump in if no one else wants to discuss. This is a historic home, and for reasons that no one understands, the previous owner decided to remove a wraparound porch, and the new owners wish to restore the wraparound post to its previous glory. And so even though there are variances that are being required by the county, the end action of this will end up with the same lot coverage as was previously true less than a year ago. I think it was in May or June that the previous porch was removed. And so the town is generally does not look kindly upon lot coverage variances and somewhat askance at front yard depth variances, but this is a special case because of the unexplainable actions of the previous owner. So I believe that covers my thoughts, at least on this. And in the work session last week, we encouraged the current owners to look into various ways that they can reduce their lot coverage while still allowing this construction to go forward. Do any other council members wish to? Councilmember Smith, your hand is up.
Yeah, sorry, I was fighting with locating my unmute button before when you called for questions. This is a home in Ward 1. I've spoke to these homeowners. The home was built in 1921. The wraparound porch existed from 1921 till I believe September, but I think your memory might be better than mine, Mr. Mayor. So we'll call it summer-ish of 2021. This wraparound porch existed for 100 years. It has not existed for a few months. And we're just talking about here restoring it back to as it existed for a century. And the homeowners are very enthusiastic and looking for more information about how to address the drainage issues going forward, given that this is a significant amount of lot coverage here. But again, just looking to put this porch back where it was for a century until a few months ago. And I hope my fellow members of the council will support.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Any additional council comments? Any public comments? Okay, Mr. Shanks?
Hey, folks. Just wanted to chime in. Thank you all for considering it. In the past week, I'm sorry, my wife was there last week, so I missed most of the discussion, but in the past week, I've actually been in contact with 2 or 3 lawn care and landscaping services to address the coverage and particularly the drainage for our lot as well. So we're taking that advice and guidance to heart, and hopefully we'll have somebody out here in about a month or so to help us take a look at that.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to hear you're moving quickly on that. It's important, you know, as I think you may know, we have flooding issues, and so I appreciate that you're looking to,
of course,
contribute to their solution. Thank you. Okay, I will do, unless there are additional public comments. I don't see any hands going up. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. Motion passes 6-0-1. Thank you very much. Please, town manager is now authorized to send a letter. Let's move on to legislative action item number 2, motion to authorize the town manager to enter into a license agreement with the International Code Council. May I have such a motion?
So moved. I was trying to give somebody else a shot.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Who was the second? I didn't see who that was.
Foe.
Oh, so motion by Smith, seconded by Foe. Mr. Town Manager, would you like to give a summary of the reasons for this motion?
Yes, as discussed last week, Mr. Mayor, this is a necessary step prior to the adoption of a new property maintenance code that's been worked on for quite some time. The licensing agreement will, the first thing it'll do is the International Code Council will provide the town with a Word document of copyrighted material that we will then be able to add the various amendments to and bring that back to the council for adoption of a property maintenance code that will apply to all parcels throughout the town.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there council questions or comments about this motion?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Mr. Listician, when do you see that coming to fruition?
I'm going to defer to Director Shelton. I believe that that we would have an ordinance, a draft ordinance at the end of the month, but it's going to depend, I think, at least in part on when we receive that Word document. But Director Shelton?
Yes, I think that'd be a fair assessment. With potentially having the new town code adopted in May. Yes.
Thank you.
Any additional council questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
Thank you. And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. Third legislative action item is motion to adopt resolution 22-R-03 to establish a committee and process to consider changes to the town's common seal. May I have a motion, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-03 for the purpose of establishing a town common seal design committee.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Seconded. Oh, give to who else? Whoever.
I believe that was Councilmember Mayor's.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll be happy to give that to Councilmember Mayers. So motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Mayers to establish a committee and process, et cetera, adopt resolution 2022-R-03. Councilman Lingua, do you wish to discuss the motion?
For the sake of clarity, I would, if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
I'd like to read what is before us for those listening or watching at home. Resolution 2022-R-03 is for the purpose of establishing a town common seal design committee charged with developing and implementing a process with the assistance of town contracted vendor or vendors and town staff to review the current common seal, seek broad community-wide engagement on images and wording for inclusion on the common seal, synthesize community input, and guided by the town's diversity and inclusion statement, the town's history, and the town's vision and commitment statements, work with a town contracted vendor or vendors to produce draft designs for consideration by the mayor and council. So whereas a common seal tells a story, illustrates values, and conveys important information about an organization, and whereas a common seal can foster a sense of place, pride, and community identity, and whereas Article 1, Section 103 of the town charter establishes that the town may have a common seal, and further that Article 10, Section 1003 reserves to the mayor and council the right to establish a common seal. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park's common seal is prominently displayed on town buildings, welcome signage, marketing materials, police officer badges of authority, staff uniforms, vehicles, and official documents. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park is committed to community outreach, communication, and transparency. And whereas the process for review and design of the town's common seal requires facilitated discussions, community surveys, and related design charrettes. And whereas the process for review and design of the town's common seal also brings together residents, businesses, visitors, and the town government with a focus on further making the town of Riverdale Park the location of choice for residents, businesses, and visitors. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the mayor and council of the town of Riverdale Park hereby establish a town common seal design committee to be comprised of 2 members of the council and 3 town residents for the purposes established above and in line with any schedule, goals, and reporting further required by the council.
Thank you for the reading, Councilmember Lingua. Is there council discussion of the motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-03? Are there any public comments on the resolution motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-03? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 601. Thank you very much. I think before, well, let's go ahead and move to item 4, motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-04, establishing the food assistance grant program. I'm going to give town staff an opportunity to discuss the next 4 motions sort of as a group, and then we can work through motions for each of them individually. So
Director Shelton, can you walk the council through these, please?
I'd be happy to. Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. The next 4 resolutions are the establishment of 3 new programs and the reestablishment of the business growth grant program with some modifications. So the first being the establishment of the food assistance grant program. There are a number of nonprofits that are helping residents in town with their food insecurities, and the town is in a position now with the receipt of the ARPA funds to assist these nonprofits with providing food to our residents. So this program would allow nonprofits who apply to receive grant funds to continue their efforts to provide food for these residents. The second resolution here, the second motion here is establishing a nonprofit grant program. This is a more general nonprofit grant program, not necessarily directed at food assistance, but in general, there's a list on the application of all the eligible activities under ARPA final rule guidelines of ways of assisting nonprofits, and those eligibility criteria are listed on the town's application, which will be live within a few days after this is approved. So this grant program would help the nonprofits who have been assisting our residents not only with food assistance, but with a number of things in town. The third is the Emergency Housing Assistance Program. This is a rent, mortgage, and utility relief program for residents of the town. The town has established a rent, mortgage, and utility assistance program before using the CARES Act funds. I think that was, yes, the winter, or late fall of 2020. And now we are in a position again where we receive the funds where we can reestablish a rent relief program to help those that have been negatively impacted by the pandemic and have not been able to pay for their mortgage, utility, or rent. The last being a resolution to reestablish the business growth grant. The mayor made comments last week that staff has addressed by amending the business growth grant to incentivize businesses in town to make modifications that would mitigate the transmission of the coronavirus in their properties. So we would provide greater matching rates and a higher matching limit to businesses who are making renovations that would address the spread of the pandemic in town. Those are the 4 motions for you on the agenda tonight. Are there any questions on these items?
council members, questions? Want to thank you, Director Shelton, for the changes, or staff in general for the changes to R07 on the business grant. I appreciate that. I have some detailed questions, but I'll wait for the individual motions to bring them up. Councilmember Lingua, you have a comment or question?
Yes, I did. I was just, I take it the tracking when needed is going to be similar to what we have been following previously during the pandemic on similar awards?
Yes, there would be monthly updates for those recipients of the nonprofit grant program, for example, to provide
Okay.
information on how the funds are spent.
Okay. And council will be getting regular updates on the activity of each of the programs.
We can certainly arrange that, yes.
I think that would be good. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more general questions, may I please have a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-04.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Siddiq to adopt resolution 2022-R-04. Is there council discussion of this motion? Are there public comments on this motion? I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 601. I think this is fantastic legislation that we're going to be helping people to stay food secure. May I have a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R05, establishing a nonprofit grant program.
So moved.
Wait, Councilmember Lingua, your hand is up.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. And my apologies to you and the body here. This is just really occurring to me at this point, more so as giving this a second thought. On this item and on item number 8, I'm going to abstain due to the fact that I am the representative for the town of Riverdale Park on the CCAR CDC, of which number 4, 2022-R05 would be able to take advantage of, as well as number 8, because being that I sit on the same board with the president of SEED, who also sits on the CCAR CDC board. So I'll be abstaining from those two items.
Thank you very much. Good example of being part of the Ethics Awareness Month. Appreciate that, Councilmember.
Thank you. And again, my apologies.
No, it's fine. Motion, may I have the motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-05.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Siddiq to adopt resolution 2022-R-05. Is there council discussion of this motion? Are there public comments on this motion? I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
As I said, I'll abstain.
thank you. Councilmember Siddiq,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 502. May I have a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-06, establishing emergency housing assistance program?
So moved.
Second.
I think that Councilmember Siddiq got it. Councilmember Foe made the motion. Councilmember Siddiq seconded. Is there discussion of this motion? I have one question on 2022-R-06. And that is under the terms of the establishment, item 1, it says funds will be available to eligible town residents. And can staff discuss who is eligible and who is not eligible under this program?
Director Shelton?
Yes, so this, by eligible, I guess that would mean that they can verify that they are indeed town residents and that their rent arrears or mortgage arrears or utility arrears can be confirmed. Those are the primary eligibility criteria for this.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure there weren't some funny ones that were coming in on the coattails of some of the ARPA requirements, but that's great. Thank you. I have no additional questions on this one. Again, are there any council questions? Or
Mr. Mayor, if I may, to be clear, the Emergency Housing Assistance Program, that's going to be administered by the town, is that correct?
Staff is suggesting that we enter into an agreement with SEED to help administer the account. SEED has experience.
So along with the grant, they would also be involved with this.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that question. Are there additional council questions or comments? Are there public questions or comments? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith?
Aye.
Councilmember Foe?
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua?
Abstain.
Councilmember Siddiq?
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia?
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers?
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 502. May I have a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-07 as reestablishing the business growth grant? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Councilmember Lingua. The second was Councilmember Foe, I believe. So the motion has been made and seconded to adopt resolution 2022-R-07 reestablishing the business growth grant. Are there council questions or comments?
Other than I'm glad to see this being reestablished. No.
Okay. I have a few questions on this. Under section or term 3, it says a minimum investment of $10,000 for general renovation projects. Is that private investment or total cost?
That would be private investment from the applicant, yes.
Okay. Does staff believe we need to adjust the language to clarify that, or that it's clear enough as is? That was my reading of it, but the language previously I said private investment, and so I think it would be a simple amendment.
We could certainly change that.
Okay, let's see how the council. I have a few other minor issues. So my second question is about the $5,000 limit, and this is actually I did not have a chance to dig back to look at the other programs that we have in place. Do we have programs for renovations under $5,000?
Not for a major interior renovation like this project. We have the business improvement grant, which one of our restaurants, for example, used to purchase some outdoor seating so that some of their patrons could eat outside during the pandemic. And that was for projects less than $5,000.
And is that program still in place or is it lapsed?
It is still in place, yes.
Okay, but the reason I ask is that as I think everyone who's listened to me anytime over the last couple of years knows that I'm a big fan of the upper room germicidal ultraviolet lamps. And I think that there are a lot of businesses that could put those in for well under $5,000 for maybe as little as $1,500 or $2,000. And so if that program is able to address that particular need, then I feel like the $5,000 limit is reasonable. But I just wanted to check in on that. And the last comment, this is another minor wording issue, is under item 6. It says the program delineated above sunsets on December 31st, 2024. And all 3 other resolutions said shall expire. And I was thinking that maybe we should just have parallel language there. So replace sunset with shall expire.
I think that's a good idea. We will do that.
Okay, so
I will accept that as a friendly amendment.
Accept both of those. So inserting private before investment in item 3 and replacing sunset with shall expire.
Yes, and yes.
Okay. Councilmember Foe, you were the seconder, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Do you accept those as friendly amendments?
I do.
Great. Okay, those are all the comments I have. I think I agree with Councilmember Lingua that it's good to see this program reestablished, and I appreciate, as I said earlier, the changes to focus attention on improvements to combat COVID. Any additional council discussion? Any public comments? Okay, let's do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. For the adoption of the agenda, item 8 no longer exists. So that moves us to unfinished business. Are there any items of unfinished business? Seeing none, let's move on to new business. There's one item of explicit new business, motion to authorize the town manager to extend the agreement with Material Lawn Mowing Services to March 31st, 2024. Mr. Town Manager, would you like to discuss this?
Yes, actually, we have Director Lewis here this evening who administers that contract. And so Director Lewis.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'll be brief. The town's 2019 agreement with Motier Services to mow and maintain 18 town-owned properties and Route 10 within the boundaries of the community will expire at the end of the month. The agreement allows an extension of up to 2 years beyond the initial term of the agreement. The staff continues to be pleased with the quality of the contractor's work over the last 3 years, and both the contractor and staff support the extension at the current price of $78,139. Staff requests that the council authorize the town manager to extend the agreement to March 31st, 2024 for a not to exceed amount of $78,139. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may just seek one point of clarification, that amount is an annual amount, correct?
It is.
Not to exceed. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there council questions or comments on this, this request? Would someone like to make a motion to authorize the town manager to extend the agreement with Motier Lawn Mowing Services to March 31st, 2024 for an annual amount not to exceed $78,139?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Councilmember Mayers. Is there council discussion of this motion? Are there public comments or questions on this? Ms. Katz, yes.
I was just curious, the services that they've been providing, do they, there's this issue of the equipment they're using, if it's gas powered. I was curious what kind of services they provide, and then also, are they doing any kind of weed removal? Are they using any products to do that other than manually?
So they are, I'm not sure if they're using gas powered. I expect they are, but don't know for certain. They mow town-owned properties, they weed, they edge, and do litter patrol in those areas as needed.
Okay, so I'm just once again, obviously we're pleased with their service, which is wonderful. I'm just curious if we're moving in the direction of, tweaking wherever we can on those sustainability visions and goals that we have with regards to, our carbon footprint and recycling and that kind of thing. I don't even know how much trash they have to pick up. I'd be curious if there's issues with that where they have to pick up trash. I know we're trying to keep our eye on places where, we can also, as residents, contribute to the cleanliness of our town as well, as far as our cleanup days and things like that. Anyway, so that was the only thoughts I had about this contract as we extend it, and just to take advantage of the opportunities when we can. Thank you.
I will mention though, where they're doing the most litter patrol, in fact, monitoring the volume that they collect is on 410. That's
Really?
a part of the information we have to provide to the state when we seek reimbursement for a portion of our cost.
Interesting. Well, it's good to hear that someone is working on that a little bit. I'm sure that does make a difference. That I wouldn't have even noticed had I not known. So that's good to hear. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Any additional public comments? Okay. Unless there's some additional council comments, I will move to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Any additional items of new business? May I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmembers Foe for the motion to adjourn, Councilmember Smith for the second. This is not a debated motion or discussed. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. We are adjourned at 9:39 p.m. Thank you all very much for a very productive meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Y'all have a good night and thank you.